The growing number of educators that are not declaring their criminal convictions, well, that's on the rise. This has resulted in a number of educators undergoing criminal checks. How big a problem is this for the sector, and what is being done to curb it? Well, I'm joined by Ashleigh Laurent from TPN Credit Bureau. Ashleigh, good afternoon. Thank you for joining me. So, I mean, these are people that we entrust with children during the day, and one would have thought we have systems in place to ensure that, they're thoroughly vetted. We'll get to the systems in a moment, but I want you to start by giving me a sense of, can we have that sense of comfort that says teachers, A, those who have criminal records are declaring them, and B, those who shouldn't be teaching are not in a classroom?
Good afternoon to Lesizwe, and good afternoon to your viewers. Thank you very, very much for having me. I think we can take cognizance in the fact that more is being done to address these educators who might have a criminal record. What can be said is that educators with a conviction of a sexual nature against a minor or mentally disabled individual should not be in the classroom. And I think we are definitely, through the necessary criminal vetting and the necessary checks, we are addressing that. What TPN's data is showing is that more schools are requesting, both public and private, are requesting that these checks be done in line with SACE's policy. We can show that from 2019, the number of requests and checks have gone up by 254% since 2019. So I think we can take cognizance of the fact that we are addressing it in that respect. And I think one must also look at the fact that the South African Council of Educators, SACE, do have a panel, a fit to teach panel, which checks each individual and checks each educator to see whether in fact they are in fact fit to teach, if they do have a conviction. So it's very much dependent on the conviction, to Lesizwe.
Yeah, so it's encouraging that more and more structures that are charged with sifting through and choosing and appointing would-be educators are making these requests for background checks, which include the check on criminal records. But I believe the numbers of teachers who do have a criminal record remains, quite significant. I think I saw a stat that talks about 3.6% of educators.
So Lesizwe, that is correct. So what TPN can show is that 3.6% of educators have a criminal record, and that more than 2/3 are not declaring these when requested to do so. Of the criminal convictions, the most common that we have found, first and foremost, is theft at 26.32%, followed by Road Traffic Act, and that is negligent driving and the sort, which is at 20.39%, assault 15.13%, fraud 4.61%, and drug trafficking at 3.95%. So very, very serious crimes, to Lesizwe, but definitely something schools can address.
Let's talk about the systems then. There are such things as that registry for sexual offenders, which one presumes, but I must say, Ashleigh, that we're not diligent in following through and insisting that our education authorities are doing this, checking names against that registry. But also the South African Council of Educators has got their own systems as well that are at play. What would be your overall assessment of how effective these are? If these educators are not declaring for themselves, there's an increase in the number of checks being requested. The question, though, is, are these fail-safe mechanisms being effective?
Look, to Lesizwe, I think more can always be done, right? The fact of the matter is things are being done. both from a school perspective and from a SACE's perspective as well. One must remind schools that there is an obligation in terms of Section 126 of the Children's Act and Section 41 of the Sexual Offences Act to check their staff. And that's now not only educators, we are talking your ground staff, your administrative staff, and the sorts, against these registers to ensure that they don't have a conviction of a sexual nature against a minor or a mentally vulnerable person. What must be said is that should schools not conduct these checks, the principal could be liable in terms of both civil and from a criminal perspective as well. So this is not a option, but it is instead an obligation in terms of law, and schools should remember that. Is it enough? Look, we can always do more, but I think schools are definitely jumping on, as we can see, by that 254%, and we hope that that number increases both in our public and private schools.
Yeah, absolutely. We do hope so. Thank you for your time and your insights here on eNCA. That's Ashleigh Laurent from TPN Credit Bureau there, touching on an issue that we should be paying more attention to, right? Just following through to make sure that the authorities who do the sifting as well as the vetting of people who stand in the classroom, who work on the school grounds, who assist our children with sporting activities at school, those people are being vetted and are declaring what criminal records they have. As you heard there from Ashleigh, those statistics of those that don't declare, but also some of the convictions that people hold that have in their names who serve in the education sector.